Good afternoon and welcome to African Affairs on CMS TV Online. I am Claire Taylor and here are some of today's main headlines. The results of the recent Ibrahim Index show progress for Africa, painting a more positive outlook for the continent. In other stories, Ethiopia becomes the most recent victim of an attack by Al-Qaeda-led Al-Shabaab militants in a reported bombing in the capital city over the weekend. Now for the latest news regarding the Ibrahim Index results. The 2013 Ibrahim Index of African Governance, released on Monday, is the seventh index to record standards of governance across African nations since its introduction in 2007. The conclusions from the index have shown that levels of governance are gradually improving across most of the 52 nations. Although some have deteriorated in fields such as the rule of law, economic opportunity and citizens' participation in government, the index measures the performance of a country on a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 reflecting the highest attainable score and 0 the worst. The four main fields surveyed for the index are in the areas of safety and rule of law, participation in human rights, sustainable economic opportunity and human development. The results from this year's index paints a more positive outlook for Africa, providing a richer picture of progress across the continent than has been seen before. The chair of the foundation which publishes the index, Mo Ibrahim himself, has highlighted the widespread improvements across Africa. Some of the released findings show promising statistics. 94% of people living in Africa now live in a country that has demonstrated overall improvement in its governance since 2000, with 18 out of the 52 African nations rating 2030 to be their most successful year. Governance improved the most in the 12 years since 2000. The 5 countries which have done the best: Liberia, Angola, Sierra Leone, Rwanda and Burundi. In countries such as Sierra Leone and Liberia, improved governance is correlated with a widespread broadening of democracy, whereas in Angola and Rwanda, their progress has been linked to high results recorded by economic indicators. Despite the index recording much desired progress and increasing levels of good governance, there has been little change from last year to the list of the continent's best and worst governed countries. The highest ranked countries still include Mauritius, the Seychelles and South Africa, with the worst including Somalia, the DRC, Eritrea and Zimbabwe. Somalia scored 8 out of 100 in the index, highlighting its position as the worst governed country on the continent, not only by its overall score, but also in all the indicators that make up the index, showing a lack of progress in all areas. Therefore, overall improvements have been noted, but as far as change for Africa's poorest countries is concerned, they still appear to be at the bottom of the scale and don't seem to be making inroads in development, evidenced clearly by the case of Somalia. In other news, Ethiopian state media have recorded that a bomb blast in the capital city, Addis Ababa, has killed at least 2 people over the weekend. The attack took place on Sunday in the city's Bole district, which is home to a large Somali population. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the bombing, but Ethiopia says it has thwarted plots of attacks in the past 2 years, and blamed rebel groups based in the south and southeast, as well as Somali's Al-Shabaab insurgents. This recent attack comes soon after last month's Al-Shabaab-led attack on the Westgate shopping mall in Nairobi, Kenya, which reportedly killed at least 67 people. Ethiopian troops have been fighting Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab militants in Somalia since 2011, alongside African Union forces from Uganda, Burundi and Kenya. Now let's look at the recent developments regarding the RTS malarial vaccine. A potential malarial vaccine known as RTS, scientists are hoping will become routine in the fight against malaria in years to come. RTS is one of several potential vaccines under development and has shown the most promising results so far. The world's largest conference on malaria took place in Durban, South Africa last week, where results from the most clinically advanced trials show that over 18 months of follow-up, the RTS vaccine almost halved the number of malaria cases in young children and reduced by about a quarter the number of malaria cases within infants. RTS is designed to prevent the malaria parasite from infecting, maturing and multiplying within the liver. after which the parasite would normally re-enter the bloodstream and infect red blood cells, leading to disease symptoms. About 941 cases of clinical malaria were prevented for every 1,000 children vaccinated, while severe malaria cases were reduced by 36%. In addition, malaria hospitalizations were reduced by 42%. However, despite researchers announcing that a malaria vaccine could be available by 2015, the threat of resistance by the malaria parasite to the most effective drugs and by mosquitoes to frontline insecticides continues to grow. Even the effectiveness of the RTSS vaccine has weakened over time. In 2011, researchers found that 1 year after the vaccine reduced the risk of developing clinical malaria by 56% in young children and by 31% in infants. The vaccine's declining effectiveness was expected, however the long-term consequences are unknown. Populations of mosquitoes which are resistant to all available insecticides, including DDT, are being increasingly reported, raising fears that another 120,000 people could die from the disease every year. Professor Hilary Ranson of the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine warned that the impact of insecticide resistance could be devastating, with no new anti-malarial insecticides on the horizon. She's urged governments in Africa and other malarial belts to monitor insecticide resistance and to rotate the variety of insecticides used to reduce the spread of the disease. Worries over resistance have been accompanied by fears of declining global fund for malaria and a reduction in crucial donor funding. Current levels are well below the amount required to reach the health-related Millennium Development Goals and other internationally agreed upon global malaria targets. An estimated US $5.1 billion is needed for every year between 2011 and 2020 to achieve universal access to malaria interventions in the 99 countries of ongoing malaria transmission. While many countries have increased domestic financing for malaria control, the total available global funding remains at $2.3 billion in 2011, less than half of what is needed. Despite worries over funding, scientists are staying focused on the future of the RTSS vaccine, with additional results expected in 2014, which will give more information on the long-term protection provided by the vaccine. Candidates will be given a booster dose 18 months after the first 3 doses of the vaccine. According to GlaxoSmithKline, the World Health Organization has indicated that it may recommend the use of RTSS vaccine as early as 2015 if EMA regulators back its license application. It will then be up to African governments to decide whether to introduce the vaccine into their public health systems. Even a moderately effective vaccine could have a huge impact in sub-Saharan Africa, which accounts for around 70% of malaria deaths each year, most of them children. Now for a look at the recent updates on Kenyan's President Kenyatta, who faces trial in front of the International Criminal Court. Progress has been made concerning the trial of Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta, who's been due to face the International Court following his role in the violence after the 2007 elections. Western diplomats have reached a deal which could see the case deferred for a year. The decision will be in the hands of the Security Council when the case is presented to them in due course. According to the UK-based Telegraph newspaper, the resolution came after an extraordinary summit of the African Union issued an ultimatum to the court to stop the case, warning judges that Kenyatta must not be compelled to face trial. The resolution by diplomats is expected to avoid a damaging standoff between the court and African states over charges faced by Kenyatta of orchestrating the deadly 2007 post-election violence. Many have defended Kenyatta, saying he is not an indicted figure who is defying the court, unlike the likes of Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir. Kenyatta has praised for his efforts to tackle the worrying terror situation in the country, following the recent Al-Shabaab militant attacks, and is said to be working closely with the West. European officials have sought to adopt measures to ensure Kenyatta is not forced to leave the country in the wake of the Westgate Mall terror attack. Bill Cash, the Conservative MP and chairman of the All-Party Kenya Group, called on the government to support a suspension of the trial in a House of Commons debate last week. In the resolution read by Ethiopia's Prime Minister, African states made it clear that no charges should be commenced or continued before any international court or tribunal against any serving head of state or government, any acting or entitled to act in such capacity during their term of office. Now for a final news story. Angry students from the University of Liberia gathered in the Monrovia City Court at the Temple of Justice in protest following the arrest of 11 people facing several charges including sedition. The 11 persons were arrested by the Liberia National Police and charged with criminal conspiracy, sedition and criminal malevolence during last Wednesday's arrival of President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf from the United States. The arrest of the defendants comes in the wake of an announcement made by some Liberians ahead of the President's arrival to demonstrate and ask her to resign due to claims that the government was corrupt. Among those arrested was a member of the main opposition party, the Congress for Democratic Change, Mulba Morlu. According to the Liberian National Police, on October the 7th, the defendants took to the streets and shouted abuse against Liberia's president, calling her corrupt and going as far as to label her as the Black Hitler. The defendants, who have been charged with sedition, a second-degree felony which, if found guilty, they will face up to 5 years in jail. Opposition politician Simeon Freeman expressed dismay over the arrest and said Liberia, instead of progressing politically, is deteriorating into a rogue state, denying the right of Liberian citizens to exercise their constitutional rights. That's all for African Affairs today. Thank you for watching. I am Claire Taylor reporting on CMS TV Online. Goodbye.